It is not an illusion created by the imagination. Rather, it is a dream, and it would be better to think of it as a recap of the previous day. The protagonist had been fighting his opponent and easily dodged its attacks because the opponent was too slow, making our boy curious whether it was a snake or a maggot. However, negligence had always been a problem for our boy. The opponent, who looked like a snake, managed to crawl up and strike him in the face, sending him flying. This caused our boy's armor, which was worth as much as a spaceship, to break. Our boy, now furious, jumped at the snake and started punching its face repeatedly to defeat it. In the heat of anger, fighting always comes first. However, what our boy enjoys the most is swordplay and swordsmanship, especially with magic. He continued striking at the snake using his sword, eventually taking it down. But as he landed, he realized he had placed his foot in the wrong spot, causing him to fall into a pit and pass out. When he finally opened his eyes, he found himself in a room. Our boy's eyes fall on the silhouette of a beautiful lady who is trying to wake him up. He notices that she has gorgeous silver hair, which, according to him, is quite normal. There are always one or two beautiful women who follow the strongest warrior in the universe. Feeling sleepy and weak, our boy assumes these are the after effects of his intense battle with the snake. As the silver-haired woman moves closer, he notices that she gives off a flowery scent, which he finds quite pleasant. When he fully opens his eyes, he sees the woman's face and finds her to be very pretty. At that moment, our boy realizes he is now a little baby who can't stop crying. This leads the silver-haired woman to conclude that her baby, named Arel, is hungry. Little does she know that her baby is crying because he has once again been reincarnated. This is because of a secret our boy holds. It is not uncommon for the protagonist, Arel, to be reincarnated into his past lives, which makes him a bit different from other reincarnated people. Unlike others, our boy can count the exact number of times he has been reincarnated, and this time marks his 101st life as a baby. If Arel's memory serves him correctly, he vividly remembers that his first life was as a Korean, born in Heljoseon, where he lived as an ordinary young man, constantly worried about employment, an existence he describes as never truly happy. Our boy was very surprised the first time he reincarnated after dying in a car accident in that life. When he woke up, he had suddenly become a baby, opening his eyes in a church surrounded by foreigners speaking a language he did not understand. From then on, our boy continued to reincarnate again and again, taking on different identities, including a space warrior, a Murim leader, a fully fledged knight, and even a secret agent. What surprised him even more was the fact that every time our boy died, he did not reincarnate in the same world. Thanks to this, he could proudly claim that he had experienced all kinds of lives across various genres, which allowed him to become fully accustomed to being reincarnated. This time, Arel is unfazed by the experience and begins observing his surroundings. After examining the style of the furniture and the interior of the room, he concludes that he is in a medieval era. Moreover, as an expert in reincarnations by now, Arel determines that this place does not resemble the Middle Ages of Earth, leading him to conclude that it must be a fantasy world. Our boy personally thinks that the science fiction world was the best, as it was the easiest place to live, clean and advanced in many ways. However, he still believes this world is far better since it is an environment where one can at least afford to hire a lady-in-waiting. After processing all this new information, our boy concludes that he is in a modest upper-class family within this fantasy world. The most fortunate thing for our boy in this life is that his mother loves him dearly. Arel can feel her love through her kisses and the way her hands wrap tightly around him as she gazes at him with warm, caring eyes. Having met many mothers in his previous lives, our boy has learned that maternal love is not something to be taken for granted. There were times when Arel was abandoned right after birth, and times when he was only seen as a means of gaining money. But this time, Arel has a good feeling about his mother. The maid, China, suggests that Arel's mother, Livanna, leave the prince to her care since Livanna must be tired. However, Livanna expresses concern about whether others will recognize her child as a prince. China reassures her that things might not turn out as she expects. Arel is surprised to hear that he is a prince, but quickly notices that something is wrong. His mother's face looks very sad as she discusses his fate with the maid. Livanna then asks China to speak to her more casually, without the use of honorifics. Livanna asks China to address her as she used to, since they are the only ones in the room, but China hesitates, saying she cannot bring herself to do so. Livanna doesn't mind, understanding that she was also a maid not long ago, doing the same work as China. Meanwhile, our boy finally figures out why his mother seems so gloomy. Livana explains that Arel is considered a prince because he carries the blood of the emperor. However, in reality, Arel is far from a glorious life, as he also has Livana's humble blood in his veins. She fears that one day Arel will blame her for the fact that he has neither the right to inherit anything nor any power in the castle. China tries to reassure Livana, saying that such a thing would never happen. Livana, however, is fully aware of what the other concubines and nobles say about her, and she knows that because of her, Arel will never have anything in this place. She apologizes to Arel, who is still a newborn, as tears begin to flow from her eyes. Seeing this, our boy does his best to wipe away his mother's tears with his tiny baby hands. Livana feels happy, believing that Arel understands everything and is doing his best to comfort his sad mother. This is the least our boy can do, as he cannot yet speak. Arel wishes he could tell his mother that he is fine with his position and that he does not care about not having the right to be a successor or lacking followers. Moreover, he knows that the powerful nobles will not pay attention to him, and even the royal family will not be concerned about him because he intends to live the life of a prince who remains indifferent to his surroundings. To Arel, this makes his 101st life the perfect opportunity to live peacefully and easily. The blood of the emperor and a royal concubine who was once a maid runs through Arel's veins, making it a unique combination. A life where our boy can stay far away from power struggles, enjoying himself to the fullest. As long as royal blood flows through Arel's veins, even a minimum standard of living will be guaranteed. As our boy dreams of his royal life, his mother, Livana, remarks that the future of this child, who knows nothing of the harsh circumstances he was born into, seems so bright. Yet Livana feels saddened by the fact that she lacks the power to protect the bright smile of her only son. Arel understands why his mother is worried. In a world full of aristocrats, where lineage and class are paramount, the life of a prince without succession rights is nothing but a potential scapegoat. Having no claim to succession means there is no future and no followers, and without power, he lacks the means to protect himself. This means that the only thing awaiting him, after being completely exploited, is death. However, even though Arel cannot speak, he tries to reassure his mother that he will be all right, as he was a seasoned pro in his previous lives, having navigated countless dangerous situations. 3 months pass quickly, and Arel is seen sleeping in his crib when his mother comes to check on him. She finds his sleeping face adorable, resembling that of an angel. Yet, she feels sadness because she had hoped Arel would have hair like the emperor's, which might make him more favorably regarded by the emperor. As Livana worries about Arel, her maid China enters the room and informs her that the carriage is ready. Livana responds that she will be there shortly, giving baby Arel a goodbye kiss and telling him to behave well since she will return soon. Once the door closes behind Livana, Arel decides to stop pretending to be asleep and wakes up, confident that his act must have convinced both his mother and China. However, our boy realizes that he should not waste any time or make any noise, as China will soon enter his room. She is usually on a 5-second standby to keep a close eye on Arel, who is still a baby. Arel decides to act quickly, knowing he won't have much time alone like this. This task is crucial for his future, and he also feels that he should enjoy his life to the fullest, especially since he was born into the royal family as a prince, even if only in name. Our boy understands that to move around freely, the most important thing he needs is power. In every world he has lived in, strength is the ultimate truth. As long as he is strong, no one will dare oppose him. Moreover, Arel did not spend his past 100 lives in vain. During his 30th reincarnation, he created a unique training method called Origin Creation Qigong. This method allows him to build strength even with a baby's body. It is a divine technique that enables Arel to cultivate both his innate qi and origin qi simultaneously. Most importantly, our boy can practice this technique even with the body of a baby. An ordinary person would never suspect that Arel is training. After mastering this method, Arel would have the equivalent of 60 years worth of inner qi by the time he reaches the age of 10, and 180 years worth by the time he is 20. Moreover, after the initial stages, Arel would no longer have to focus as intensely because, once he accumulates enough qi, he can continue to practice even while in the nanny's arms. Our boy notices that the amount of qi he has managed to store is minimal, so he decides to speed things up, aware that his nanny could enter at any moment. He begins slowly moving the accumulated qi to his brain's frontal lobe, using the electrical stimulation of his body's energy and nerves. This allows him to feel the chi expanding throughout his body. Arel's head becomes overwhelmed with heat as the energy reaches a point where he can no longer control it, causing him to let out a loud scream. This startles the nanny, who rushes back into the room in just 5 seconds. Fortunately, our boy finishes his task within that short span of time, just as China arrives to check on him. China enters the room, possibly to change Arel's diaper, but Arel silently wishes she wouldn't touch him. Even a small touch could dissipate all the energy he has accumulated so far. Fortunately, China decides not to change the diaper and leaves the room, thinking that Arel's worried expression might mean he had a nightmare. As she exits, Arel feels his body start to burn like a human thermal power plant. The reason China didn't notice anything unusual is because Arel was able to suppress the amplification for a moment, but now he is overheating. Our boy knows that a fever can be very dangerous for babies, so he tries his best to control it, though he has no idea how long his body can withstand it. Determined not to live his life at someone else's mercy, he decides to push himself to the level of chi manipulation by using the origin qigong technique. Everything Arel is doing now is aimed at living a comfortable life. As our boy accelerates to the level of chi manipulation, he lets out a loud scream, even louder than before. The sound is so intense that it echoes through the room and reaches China, who is walking away from Arel's room. China hears Arel scream and rushes back to his room to check on him, but she is surprised to find him sleeping peacefully. However, there is one thing she finds strange. Arel is sweating profusely. She decides that he will be fine after a nice, refreshing herbal bath, so she heads to the kitchen to prepare it. Meanwhile, our boy is relieved, not only because China didn't notice anything unusual, but also because he has achieved the prefrontal lobe hyperevolution. After China gives Arel the herbal bath and changes his clothes, she is pleased to see that he seems to be in good condition. She notices that Arel is moving his arms normally, which puts her at ease. Our boy believes that China has no affinity for mana, as she cannot detect that he is using the chi from his awakened frontal lobe to sense and absorb mana from the atmosphere. In other words, Arel is getting stronger just by eating, sleeping, and idling around, which makes him quite happy. If he keeps progressing at this rate, he knows his future will be promising. He believes that by the time he turns 3, he will have accumulated a considerable amount of inner chi, and by the time he reaches 10, the number of individuals capable of killing him might be counted on one hand. China notices that Arel is continuously looking up, which makes her curious if there is something above that catches his interest, but she cannot understand what fascinates him. She does know one thing, though. She likes it when Arel smiles. What China doesn't realize is that our boy is happy because he is gradually getting stronger while in his nanny's arms and is looking forward to the day he can live idly as a prince. He hopes for that day to come quickly. 5 months have passed since Arel was born, and thanks to the effects of the origin creation qigong technique, both his physical abilities and inner chi are developing faster than those of his peers. Arel is automatically accumulating chi every day. Although he is crawling on the floor at the moment, once he has built up enough chi, something like levitating would be a walk in the park for him. As our boy is playing by himself, he is surprised when he starts to feel himself levitating, but he soon realizes that it is his mother who has lifted him up. She is happy to see Arel having fun and wants to give him a rattle as a gift. At first, Arel is not enthusiastic about the rattle, but when he notices his mother's disappointment, he quickly begins playing with it, giving the proper reaction. This puts Livanna at ease. She is glad to see her son enjoying her gift and decides to play with Arel a bit longer, while her maid, China, finds Arel's reactions to be the cutest. Livanna wonders who Arel takes after with his adorable behavior, while our boy thinks he clearly takes after his mother. He decides to cherish these moments, knowing that being adored is a luxury that can only be truly enjoyed in childhood. As Arel continues playing with his mother, he suddenly feels hungry, but being so small, he has no other way to express it except by crying. So, Arel begins to cry to let his mother and China know that he is hungry. China quickly catches on and informs Livanna that Arel might need to be fed. As Livanna feeds our boy, she asks China about the whereabouts of her maid, Anna. China replies that Anna quit just yesterday because the palace's budget was smaller this year, which saddens Livanna, as Anna was a bright and smart girl. Our boy realizes that the palace's financial situation isn't good, something he had overheard from the maids while playing in his crib. They were discussing how they needed to reduce the amount of food on Lady Lavanna's table while still considering nutrition. However, they couldn't do much because of the low budget. Arel had initially thought it was just the maids complaining, But now he understands that the situation is more serious than he assumed. He hadn't realized things were this bad, especially since his mother is still a royal concubine, and he expected there wouldn't be any problems in her palace. But Arel thinks the main problem is that his mother was born a maid, even though she gave birth to a prince. Livana, however, is simply glad they are not starving, while China considers them fortunate that they don't have to reduce the number of soldiers. China then points out that their biggest challenge will be the winter, especially now that they have the prince, since they can't grow anything during that season. Our boy, still satisfying his hunger, hadn't realized things were so dire that they wouldn't be able to survive on their own. He assumed he wouldn't freeze to death simply because he was a prince. China suggests they should seek help from the emperor, but Livana replies that she hasn't been able to see him at all because he is a busy person. Our boy realizes that the reason his mother often went out in the carriage was to see the emperor, but Arel finds it strange that Livana wasn't able to see him even once. After all, no matter how merciless an emperor may be, that kind of behavior is unacceptable, which makes our boy wonder if there are forces, like the emperor's close aides or other concubines, keeping his mom in check and isolating her. Hearing all this makes Arel feel sorry for his poor mom, and he starts crying, as if trying to tell the maid that he wants to go to Livana. China quickly understands and hands Arel over to Livana. Arel decides that, no matter what happens, he will find a way to help his mom, even though, at the moment, he is only good at acting cute and rolling over. As night falls, our boy, sitting in his crib, starts thinking about how he can help his mom get through the winter without worry. He knows they need to address the food problem first, which requires a lot of money. Moreover, they will also need more firewood to keep themselves warm in the snowy weather. Suddenly, Arel comes up with a brilliant idea to solve his mother's problems. As our boy contemplates how he can help his mother get through the winter, Arel's eyes fall on the charcoal lying in the fireplace, sparking an idea. Charcoal is rich in carbon, which means Arel could potentially create a diamond, a valuable jewel made from carbon. Even making just one diamond could solve his problem, given the value of jewelry in this place. Our boy tries to stand up to get out of the crib, but, due to his weak body, he falls back down. Determined, he thinks of another way and remembers that he possesses enough mana to levitate out of the crib. With ease, our boy lifts himself into the air, finding it surprisingly simple, and moves toward the fireplace to transform the charcoal into a diamond. Right now, the charcoal is an important resource for him, even though it's currently only used to heat his room. He considers himself a genius for thinking of making a diamond from charcoal, but decides not to spend the night praising himself. Arel decides to use this time to quickly create a diamond while everyone is asleep, which motivates him for the task. He focuses intently as he combines thermal energy with mana to apply as much pressure as possible to the charcoal. Arel is determined not to hold back and concentrates fiercely on the task, knowing that while he can accumulate mana again, he cannot afford to waste the energy he has gathered so far. He compresses the energy with all his might, akin to zipping a large file with WinRAR, to increase the internal pressure of the charcoal. He endures the pressure, determined not to be pushed out, as he knows that successfully creating the diamond will make his mother happy. As Arel continues to compress, a powerful blast occurs, sending the smoke generated in the process up through the chimney. With that, Arel successfully creates a diamond, which he finds truly beautiful. After completing this challenging task, Arel lies down and begins to think about how to present the diamond he made to his mother. As the sun rises, China enters Arel's room and is surprised to find him crawling out of the crib, as she believes it is not yet possible for him to do so. Concerned that Arel might have slept on the cold floor all night, China picks him up and notices that not only is Arel's adorable face smudged, but the fireplace and carpet are also in disarray. She concludes that Arel must have been playing alone throughout the night. China is further astonished by the mess on the floor, which seems unusual given the age of the palace. She decides to prevent Arel from touching the floor for now. Arel, trying to reassure China, acts as cute as possible, placing his hands over his mouth to make her think he has something in his mouth. China, with her keen senses, notices this and asks Arel to show her what he has in his mouth. China is astonished when a beautifully shiny diamond emerges from Arel's mouth. She gently squishes his cheeks to ensure the object is fully revealed. Curious about where Arel obtained this diamond, she notes that nothing is missing from the treasury she manages, and that no such diamond is listed in the palace's records. Despite this, China decides not to dwell on the matter and thanks Arel, who seems eager to present the diamond to her. Meanwhile, Arel wonders whether his mother will appreciate the gift he prepared. Soon after, a parade of wagons arrives at the palace, delivering items that fill the empty kitchen warehouse with groceries and firewood. The storage space becomes so crowded that there is no room for additional supplies, alleviating the palace's concerns. This abundance is made possible by the diamond Arel crafted, which was traded at an exceptionally high price, securing provisions for the next 5 years. Despite this relief, Livanna remains concerned about whether the gem has an original owner. China reassures Livanna that there is no cause for concern, explaining that the castle had been ownerless for nearly 100 years before Livanna took possession, which alleviates Livanna's worries. China further suggests that the discovery of the diamond might be a sign of divine favor upon the prince. While Livanna is uncertain about this notion, she is relieved that their problems have been resolved. Arel crawls over to his mother and grabs her clothing with his tiny hands, conveying that she must persevere until he grows up. He promises that, once that time comes, he will do everything in his power to attract the emperor's attention and resolve any further issues. The fireplace at Livanna's palace burned continuously throughout the winter as the palace's finances stabilized. This financial stability led to improvements in the living conditions of both the master and the servants, which was evident from the transformation of Livanna's once nearly empty dining table, now filled with a variety of dishes. Livanna noticed that the food served to her each morning was more than she could eat on her own, and expressed concern about the food provided to the servants. However, China assured her that there was no need to worry about the servants and encouraged Livanna to focus on enjoying the meals on her table. Additionally, Anna, the maid who had been forced to quit due to the palace's poor conditions, was reinstated. This brought joy to Livanna as Anna rejoined her fellow maids, and overall treatment of the servants improved. The most significant change, however, was the transformation in Livanna's demeanor. Her once gloomy face, which Arel finds most beautiful when she smiles, was now radiant. Despite the harshest winter on record, it was the warmest season Arel had ever experienced. The year passes quickly as Livanna and China deliberate over a suitable outfit for Arel. They try on various clothes without reaching a decision, which begins to irritate Arel. This is the first time they have made such a fuss over his outfit, and he grows tired of their indecision. To express his need for rest in a manner befitting a prince, Arel decides to start crying. Hearing his cries, China concludes that Arel wants to sleep, so they promptly dress him and place him in his crib, allowing him to rest peacefully. As China settles Arel into the crib, he overhears her mention that he will be officially recognized as a member of the royal family today. This piques Arel's curiosity about what she means. Meanwhile, Livanna expresses her happiness that Arel has grown up without any issues over the past year, though she remains concerned about whether the emperor will attend Arel's birthday. Although Arel might be a prince only in name, the royal blood still runs through his veins. China reassures Livanna that the emperor has not overlooked Arel. He was simply waiting for the appropriate moment, as misfortunes often befall newborns. Meanwhile, Arel realizes that the earlier fuss was about his birthday. Livanna explains that, while it might not be a grand banquet, the event will officially announce that Arel has inherited royal blood, which pleases her as it means that the rules of the Urnesia royal family will apply to him. Arel, having finally understood why his mother is excited, wonders if the nobles and other members of the royal family will attend, as it is a banquet. This means he might finally meet the emperor, prompting him to start planning something. The banquet begins, and all the guests enjoy the food and the beautiful performances by the violist and the pianist. The banquet is charming, and Arel, who is amazed by the entire setup, thinks that the emperor must have spent a considerable amount of money on such extravagance. Our boy is thoroughly enjoying the grandeur of the banquet and the fancy attire, a novel experience even for someone living his 101st life. Livanna and China are pleased to see Arel enjoying himself at the event held in his honor. China realizes that Arel's enjoyment might stem from seeing so many people for the first time. Livanna kisses Arel on the cheek and tells him that he is the main character of the evening. Arel notices some ladies gossiping about him and his mother, but chooses to ignore them. What interests him more is the Emperor of Urnesia, Tearel Urnesia, Arel's father, who has yet to make an appearance. Arel is eager to see how important the Emperor must be to avoid appearing since Arel's birth. Additionally, Arel is troubled by the fact that the Emperor seems indifferent to the conditions in which Arel and his mother are living. As our boy contemplates how to make his presence known to the Emperor, the royal family of Urnesia, excluding the Emperor, arrives at the banquet, marking the official start of the event with their grand entrance. The pressure from the Queen, who enters with her children, Arel's half-siblings, is palpable. Among them, the queen's eldest son stands out, followed by the brown-haired girl who seems to still exhibit a somewhat aloof demeanor, accompanied by her three younger siblings. Our boy scrutinizes each of them closely, but is taken aback when he notices that none of them acknowledge his mother, which incites his anger. Meanwhile, Livana assumes that Arel's reaction is due to the noise and tells him to be patient, even though he is struggling to do so. The atmosphere of the banquet shifts dramatically with the queen's arrival. Women begin to gossip about the queen's beauty, noting that she has brightened the entire event with her presence. Meanwhile, our boy feels sympathy for Livana, who, despite her difficulties, is still doing her best to ensure that Arel enjoys himself. However, Arel is taken aback when he notices a sudden change in his mother's expression, which had been calm until now. Curious about the cause of her reaction, Arel scans his surroundings and discovers that the commotion is due to the entrance of the Emperor of Arnesia. Arel is not surprised by the Emperor's appearance, but rather by the sheer amount of energy he is radiating. Tearel Arnesia, the Emperor, walks through the palace with an immense golden aura emanating from him, intensifying with each step he takes toward the throne. Our boy is stunned by the overwhelming pressure radiating from Tearel, bewildered by the incredible energy he currently feels. Tearel's charisma is so powerful that it instantly silences even the most talkative nobles, amplifying the weight of the atmosphere he commands. Arel, too, feels intimidated by the Emperor's extraordinary presence. He bites his thumb aggressively, estimating that Tearel must be at least a peak-level master in this world. Suddenly, Tearel stops and turns toward Arel and his mother, staring at them intently. Arel is left unsure if Tearel's gaze is fixed on him or his mother, leading him to regret that even after 100 reincarnations, our boy has not yet learned to read another person's mind or discern their thoughts. Tearel resumes his walk toward the throne as the audience obediently waits for him to be seated so the gathering can continue. Once Tearel takes his seat, the banquet officially begins, with many lower-class nobles approaching the table where our boy and his mother are sitting. They congratulate them, presenting numerous gifts and claiming it is an honor to meet Prince Arel. However, this is all a farce. Regardless of whether they are low-ranking nobles or high-ranking aristocrats, they all share the same disdain for Arel and his mother. Their contempt is so blatant that they can't even hide it on their faces. Our boy finds this deeply frustrating, which leads him to act out in anger, while Arel's mother sits quietly with a sad expression. Arel continues to vent his anger by hurling all sorts of derogatory terms at the nobles and considers ruining their hearing by screaming at the top of his lungs. But Arel's mother gently embraces him, calming him down with a cheerful offer to feed him some milk. Looking at his mother's kind face, our boy decides to abandon the idea of hurting others, realizing that it would only negatively impact Arel's mother. He calms down, recognizing that such behavior from people was to be expected and shouldn't matter much to Arel. To pass the time in this irritating place, our boy decides to take a quick nap, yawning obnoxiously. However, he is immediately disturbed by a sharp pinch on his cheek. The sting catches Arel off guard, and he quickly turns to see who did it. He spots a little girl who calls him small and realizes she is with the other royal concubines who have also come to offer their greetings. Our boy forgives the little girl, understanding that she is too young to grasp the complexities of power struggles. The concubines then bow in respect, congratulating him on his birthday, but their gesture is shallow, performed only out of courtesy. When Arel's mother attempts to thank and welcome them, the concubines walk away before she can even finish her sentence. The entire banquet continued with such occurrences, leaving our boy and his mother feeling quite sad, despite Arel's efforts to comfort her by holding her tightly. Suddenly, Arel's mother, Livana, is greeted by the queen, Elia, who also wears a cold expression. When Livana politely asks Elia how she has been, Elia seizes the opportunity to brag about how her eldest son has properly earned the position of the first heir. This boasting makes our boy feel disgusted by Elia's pride in her son. As our boy cautiously navigates around Elia, she unexpectedly compliments him, saying that Arel looks exactly like Livana and even gives a genuinely happy smile, calling him cute. However, our boy remains on guard, suspecting it could be another act. After all, if Elia were truly a kind and good-hearted person, the situation in the concubines' living quarters and Livana's finances would not be so dire. The guards would not have to perform daily chores or work alongside the maids, using whatever scraps of cloth they could find to make clothes for Arel. In front of the giant window that casts sunlight on the prominent figures of the banquet, Elia and her first son depart after Elia wishes Arel and Livanna a good time as mother and son, though a sinister smile lingers on her face as she turns away. Following this brief and cold interaction, Livanna is approached by the Emperor, Tearel himself, who bluntly asks if her life has been going smoothly, almost as if he were merely checking off a list. Livanna, unable to speak freely in the Emperor's presence, assures Tearel that everything is perfectly fine, while our boy is much more expressive about the difficulties at the concubine palace. Our boy demands his expenses and money from Tearel by crying and turning in his mother's arms, while Livanna urges him to behave in front of the Emperor. Tearel, intrigued by Arel's behavior, thinks for a moment before asking Livanna to hand Arel over to him so that he can hold our boy, noting that it is a rare sight for a child not to cry upon seeing him. Arel decides to laugh in Tearel's face, believing that no father could be cruel in response to the heartfelt smile of his child. Remarkably, this tactic works, as Tearel smiles at Arel's unique behavior, leaving Livanna shocked by the unexpected development. Feeling a bit too eager, our boy decides to show something else to his father by gesturing to be put down, which Tearel somehow manages to understand. As our boy prepares to walk, Livanna quickly tells Tearel that Arel is not yet able to walk, which Tearel finds reasonable, considering it is only Arel's first birthday. However, while they are both busy speculating, our boy begins to take his first steps forward without any support, astonishing everyone in the room, including Tearel and Livanna. With this incredible achievement for a toddler, Livanna's maid cheers for Arel's first steps, while Livanna sheds a tear of pure happiness at the sight of her son walking already. Meanwhile, Tearel is intrigued, wondering if Arel intended to show him that he could actually walk. But our boy has even more in store to show Tearel, hoping to make a memorable impression from the very beginning. With everyone keenly observing what Arel will do next, he walks over to the dining table and grabs the tablecloth. However, instead of executing whatever he had planned to stand out in front of Tearel, Arel receives a harsh reality check. He is still just a toddler. He pushes the tablecloth, causing the food on the table to fall onto him, surprising everyone at the banquet, especially his father, his mother, and China. But our boy did not do this by mistake. He had a clever plan that no one noticed, as they were all still marveling at the first steps of a one-year-old prince. Arel pulled the tablecloth at the perfect moment, just as a baby might, causing the items on the table to fall safely onto him. He then finished with his perfect crying technique, which prompted the Emperor to walk over to him. The Emperor lifts Arel up to calm him down and ensure he is unhurt, while our boy, realizing the advantage of still being a little child, decides to cry a bit longer. Livanna and China panic and rush over to check if Arel is all right, but the Emperor reassures them that Arel is not injured, though he might need a change of clothes. China asks the Emperor if she can take Arel, but the Emperor assures her there is no problem. However, as the Emperor holds our boy, he notices that his own son is wearing worn-out and dirty undergarments. This discovery infuriates the Emperor, while China and Livanna are shocked, especially since China had ensured that the prince's undergarments were in good condition when she dressed him that morning. The guests expressed disgust at Arel for wearing such dirty clothes, deeming them unfit for a prince and speculating that the young prince might have been living a humble life until now. The Emperor, angered by their comments, orders everyone at the banquet to be silent. He then asks little Arel about the kind of life he has been living up until now. Meanwhile, our boy is finally happy, realizing he has successfully made the Emperor believe his little act, which he had planned to execute that morning. While the nanny was preparing to change our boy's clothes before going out, he had raised his body heat using his energy. The fabric of Arel's clothes was so fragile that our boy could tear it with his bare hands, and the lint was created after he rubbed it slightly. He did all this to reveal the uncomfortable truth behind the fancy clothes, which seemed to be merely a facade for Arel's birthday. This situation prompts the Emperor to question Arel's mother, Livanna, about why Arel's attire does not meet the royal family standards. Livanna is frightened by the inquiry, but the Emperor soon realizes that Livanna may not be the appropriate person to answer his questions. He then asks Jennifer, his butler, about how the budget was allocated to each palace, ensuring that his orders were followed. Jennifer reports that he was instructed to distribute the budget fairly among the palaces and confirms that the budget is as the Emperor understands it to be. However, the Emperor becomes angry when the butler mentions the fair distribution, questioning whether Arel's poor condition demonstrates that the budget was indeed distributed fairly. After receiving no response from the butler, the emperor orders Jennifer to immediately bring him the details of the budget. Meanwhile, our mischievous boy sees this as an opportunity to learn more about his father, even though his birthday party has abruptly turned into a hearing. Livanna and China step forward, acknowledging their fault, as Livanna takes the baby from the emperor. However, the emperor remains silent, while our boy reassures his mother to endure a little longer, as he is creating this drama for their benefit. The guests and performers remain silent in the emperor's formidable presence as Jennifer finally delivers the budget details and hands them over to the emperor. The emperor reviews the budget thoroughly, reading it word for word. After a careful examination, he becomes enraged and burns the document, which terrifies poor Livanna. Observing the emperor's reaction, Arel deduces that the emperor was unaware of the situation, which piques our boy's curiosity about who tampered with the palace's budget. Tearel calls his queen forward and asks if she was aware of the budget issue. Instead of answering the emperor, the queen inquires about the contents of the document. Tearel informs her that the budget was not distributed fairly and that funds were being misallocated, which shocks the queen, as she finds this notion impossible. Tearel repeats his question, asking if the queen truly did not know about this, despite her responsibility for matters related to the concubines. Before Tearel can say anything further to the queen, her eldest son steps forward and addresses his father. The queen's eldest son stands before his father and asserts that the embezzlement of funds was likely carried out by someone malicious, as his mother, the queen, is never unkind to the concubines. Tearel then questions whether this means the queen is not responsible for the mismanagement simply because she did not commit the wrongdoing herself, pointing to Arel, who is poorly clothed and has suffered from this lack of oversight. As Tearel discusses the matter with his eldest son, our boy feels relieved, noting that the queen's malicious aura seems to have dissipated in the presence of the emperor's charisma. Tearel asks if his son is suggesting that the queen bears no responsibility since she did not directly commit the offense, leaving his eldest son speechless and unable to respond. Tearel expresses his profound disappointment in the queen, shocking everyone present at the banquet as they witness the emperor reprimanding her. At this moment, Livanna intervenes, stating that Lady Elia, the queen, is not at fault. Rather, she argues that the fault lies with her, implying that she does not deserve the royal life she leads. Tearel responds by questioning how Livanna can make such a claim when she has given birth to his child, which alone qualifies her as a member of the royal family. Livanna wants to speak, but Tearel smiles at her and tells her she should be proud of herself for being a member of the royal family, while Elia, on the other hand, finds Livanna repugnant. The emperor then turns to his queen and orders her to track down and hold accountable those responsible for the mismanagement, emphasizing that he hopes such an incident does not occur again. Elia assures Tearel that she will make sure not to trouble him further, but Tearel warns her that if a similar situation arises in the future, he will hold her accountable. Angered by the perceived failings of the concubines, Elia promises Tearel that she will identify and severely punish the responsible party. She then turns to Livanna to apologize for the mistake she made. Elia expresses that it would have been preferable if Livanna had consulted her first. Our boy finds Elias acting ridiculous, thinking that no one would fall for such poor performance. He is surprised when Livanna, rather than addressing Elia directly, tells her that there is no need for an apology from someone like Elia. Our boy believes that his mother should have at least confronted Elia, as she obviously deserves it. It seems implausible that Elia was unaware of the situation from the beginning. Elia assures Livanna that she will prevent such issues from recurring and that Livanna need not worry about it. However, Arel perceives no sincerity in Elia's eyes, nor in the eyes of any of the emperor's concubines. Despite the drama, Arel's birthday party concludes, and the budget problem is swiftly resolved. The mastermind behind the mismanagement of the palace's funds, a member of the aristocratic family, is apprehended and meets a miserable end. The maids in Livanna's palace discuss how the ringleader confessed after the investigation. Despite their relief that the matter has been settled, our boy feels that the situation was too conveniently resolved, as things went silent following the execution. Arel is certain that the queen is a formidable opponent and vows to confront her more decisively once he grows up. For now, however, he is focused on addressing his hunger. Arel starts crying to signal China that he is hungry. China returns with soup, encouraging him to eat well since she specifically prepared it for him. This makes our boy happy, as he decides to focus solely on his growth for the time being. He resolves to play and eat like a baby, finding it thrilling to simply enjoy himself and eat. After his meal, Arel decides to take a nap to recharge for more playtime. However, after some time, he wakes up to the sound of horse carriages, which piques his curiosity, as he realizes these carriages are different from the ones his mother uses for travel. Looking out the window to identify the people the soldiers are escorting, our boy detects 3 individuals approaching his room. He recognizes one person as likely being his mother, suspects another is an adult, and concludes that the last one is a child due to their light step. Realizing he needs to wake up his nanny without drawing attention, our boy quickly moves to alert her, ensuring that he does not get caught. Arel quickly manages to reach his nanny, who is sleeping soundly on the sofa, and begins pinching her cheeks. This causes her discomfort, prompting China to request that the prince stop because it hurts. At that moment, Livana enters the room with her guests and sees Arel pinching China's cheeks forcefully. She admonishes Arel, telling him not to treat China that way, while China rises to greet her lady. Excited to see Livana, Arel extends his arms, signaling that he wants to be picked up. Instead, Livana tells Arel to behave like a good boy and listen to his nanny. China, surprised to see Lady Phinelia, apologizes for not having made proper preparations for her visit. Lady Phinelia, however, assures China that she does not mind, as she had not informed anyone of her visit to the palace. Livana, on the other hand, remarks that had Phinelia informed them of her visit, they could have made appropriate preparations. Phinelia explains that she did not want others to know she was coming to Livana's palace. While our boy, who is in China's arms, finally recognizes Lady Phinelia as one of the royal concubines he saw at the banquet, Phinelia instructs her daughter to stay in the room, as she wishes to have a private conversation with Lady Livana. The scene shifts to Livana and Phinelia seated across from each other. Livana is puzzled by Phinelia's sudden visit, especially since she had not been informed in advance. As Livana contemplates starting the conversation, Phinelia surprises her by apologizing, causing Livana to cough unexpectedly. Concerned, Phinelia asks if Livana is all right. Livana assures her that she is fine and inquires about the reason for Phinelia's sudden apology. Phinelia explains that she has been feeling regretful and wanted to apologize for having ignored Livana during the prince's birthday celebration. This revelation shocks Livana further, leaving her uncertain of how to respond to Phinelia, who hails from Kinchester, a prestigious family known for its significant contributions during the height of the continent's war. The Kinchester family was renowned throughout the country, but its former glory has long since faded. The family's decline began when no new generation exhibited the military talent that once distinguished them. This decline led to rumors that the family's finances were in jeopardy, placing the Kinchester family in a difficult position. Livana inquires if Phinelia's actions were motivated by the family's financial troubles. Phinelia confirms that she acted to settle the family's debt, explaining that she could not refuse their proposal. She places a pouch full of money on the table. When Livana asks why Phinelia is doing this, Phinelia responds that she is returning the money, even though it will not resolve the underlying issues. She still felt it necessary to bring Livana this pouch of gold coins. Livana is at a loss for words, but Phinelia clarifies that she is not seeking forgiveness. Instead, she requests that Livana direct her resentment solely toward Phinelia, while gesturing toward her daughter, who is playing in the other room. Livana eventually understands that Phinelia is trying to protect her only child from the political machinations of the emperor and the royal family. She reassures Phinelia that it is acceptable, and, in a gesture of goodwill, Livana declines to accept the pouch from Phinelia. Livana explains that she never harbored any ill feelings toward Phinelia, which surprises Phinelia. Phinelia initially believes that Livana's refusal to accept the money stems from pity over her family's troubles. She insists that Livana need not feel sympathy for her. In response, Livana clarifies that she does not feel pity but rather wishes to avoid animosity between them. She offers to return the pouch of coins as a gesture of friendship, suggesting that Phinelia may also consider it a gift. Livana then explains that the issues with their palace's budget are due to Lady Elia, whom Livana knows well. This revelation shocks Phinelia, as she realizes that Livana's suspicion of Elia's involvement stems from her own past as Elia's attendant, which further surprises Arel. Arel, who had been eavesdropping on their conversation from his room, now finally understands the source of his mother's resentment toward the queen. China, still in Arel's room, notices his unusual behavior and asks if he feels unwell. Arel responds with a wide smile to reassure her that he is fine, although China remains puzzled by Arel's mood swings. China then approaches Princess Kania, who is engrossed in a book, and inquires about her progress. Meanwhile, Arel sighs with relief as he refocuses on his previous task. By controlling his chi, Arel can overhear conversations from beyond the room. He concentrates once again to listen to his mother's discussion with Phinelia. Phinelia expresses to Livanna that she feels powerless in the face of Lady Elia's disdain and has resigned herself to it. However, Livanna, setting down her cup of tea, declares that she will no longer tolerate Elia's contempt. With her son Arel by her side, Livanna resolves to stand firm against Elia's behavior, regardless of her status as queen. Livanna has no intention of letting the queen act with impunity. She seeks to form a close bond with Lady Phinelia, which makes Phinelia realize that Livanna's motives are not merely driven by goodwill but by a desire to see a resolution. Phinelia acknowledges Livanna's position and contemplates that a day may come when they will both find themselves cornered and in need of mutual support. Meanwhile, Arel, now fully aware that his mother has been privy to the ongoing feud between the queen and the royal family against them, begins to prepare himself for the challenges that lie ahead. He understands that anyone could pose a threat to them from now on. As Arel contemplates these issues, he suddenly notices a hand reaching into his crib. Looking up, he sees Lady Phinelia's daughter trying to climb into the crib for a closer look at him. Arel wonders how she managed to get there, and fears that the little girl might jump into the crib. But Arel's worst fears come true when Phinelia's daughter climbs into the crib and begins to play roughly with Arel's cheeks, finding them warm and inviting. Arel is bewildered by why Phinelia's daughter treats him like a toy, even though he is clearly not one. China, observing the interaction, exclaims that Arel is simply adorable, to which Kania agrees. Meanwhile, Arel, who feels at the mercy of Kania's playful antics, pleads with his nanny to rescue him from this discomfort. However, Arel feels betrayed when China goes a step further and encourages Kania to visit him often, which surprises Kania. Arel is left wondering how China could say such a thing, as her primary role is to protect him. Time passes, and Arel turns 30 months old. He stands by the window of his room, reflecting that life is but a fleeting moment. In just 6 months, he will be 3 years old. Despite this, Arel remains frustrated with his baby tongue, which still fails to articulate properly. He knows it will take some time before he becomes accustomed to speaking. As Arel reminisces about his past reincarnations, when he could charm women within 10 minutes due to his eloquent speech, he suddenly hears footsteps approaching his room and quickly identifies who is coming by the sound. The door opens abruptly, and Kania barges in, inviting Arel to play with her. Discovering that Arel is not immediately visible, Kania does not leave, but begins searching for him in the room. She quickly succeeds in finding Arel hiding behind the curtains. Delighted that Arel seems to want to play hide and seek with her, Kania decides to take him to a larger area where they can play more effectively. Arel, unable to explain to Kania why he was hiding, reflects on how Kania's frequent visits began after Phinelia's visit to Livanna. Arel suspects that Kania's visits might be due to something China said, but he recognizes that Kania's regular presence indicates that Livanna and Phinelia have grown quite close. As Arel contemplates this, Kania explains that the reason she frequently visits their house is to play with Arel and take care of him, given that he is still young. She adds that in return, Arel should do the same for Kania when he gets older, visiting her home whenever she calls. Arel agrees, thanking Kania for playing with him, while he wonders why it seems that he is the only one engaging in play with Kania. Kania confides in Arel that she likes him the most because Leonil is unpleasant, and playing with Meryl is not enjoyable, but she feels a strong bond with Arel. However, Arel is unsure of the validity of this sentiment, as he questions whether he will still be playing with Kania in a few years when he is older. While Arel is lost in thought, Kania suddenly picks him up and hugs him tightly, making it difficult for Arel to breathe. He begins to plead for relief. Observing this, Kania's caretaker advises her not to hug Arel so tightly, as it could hurt him, and requests that Kania allow her to take care of Arel instead, suggesting that it is best not to overdo it since he is still very young. This provides Arel with relief as he clings to Kania's maid, thinking that her timing is impeccable. Kania, however, complains that she wants to play more. Her maid suggests that Kania could go inside to paint or play an instrument, but Kania finds these activities dull. The maid then asks Kania what she really wants to do. Kania scans the area for something interesting and spots a stick lying on the ground. She picks it up and begins swinging it, expressing her desire to learn how to wield a sword like her brother Kyle. As Kania swings the stick, imitating Kyle as best she can, Arel observes that her center of gravity remains stable and her body balance is quite good. He thinks she has a natural talent for it, given her ability to remember and mimic movements, despite still being somewhat clumsy. Kania insists to her maid that she wants to learn swordsmanship so she can knock down knights, but her maid informs her that it is not possible. Kania is surprised by this and asks her maid why she cannot learn swordsmanship, especially since she has seen her brothers Kyle and Leonil practicing it. The maid explains that there is no reason for Kania to learn swordsmanship, and despite her stubbornness, she must accept that her most important studies should focus on literature, culture, and other such subjects. While the maid is occupied with explaining these priorities, Kania quietly takes the maid's sword without her noticing and declares that she will learn swordsmanship. The maid pleads with Kania to return the sword, but Kania refuses. The maid then suggests that Kania at least practice swordsmanship with a scabbard, as she might hurt herself otherwise. Observing the maid's frantic attempts to retrieve the sword, Arel finds Kania's determination quite intriguing. Time continues to pass quickly as Arel turns 5 years old, and with all his might, our boy is doing his best to avoid any real effort. He rides a toy horse while his maid, China, believes Arel should try riding a real horse. However, our boy thinks that riding a real horse is far too dangerous. China tells Arel that he is at an age where he should already be interested in riding horses and playing with swords. Arel, in response, tells China to discard the outdated notion that a prince must ride a horse, which frustrates her because she cannot convince him to ride or learn swordsmanship. Our boy, on the other hand, has realized one undeniable truth after living more than 100 lives. His exceptional talents bring him nothing but misfortune. When he excelled in swordsmanship, swordsmen from all over came to challenge him. When he mastered magic, he had to confront those who sought to use or destroy him. With the skills accumulated from his past lives, he constantly found himself caught up in dangerous situations. Though Arel has faced some troubles at the palace, what he does from now on is of great importance. As he cannot let the past repeat for the 101st time, our boy takes caution. Before entering his room, he warns his maid not to disturb him, as it is an important moment for him. The maid responds by wishing Arel a good time meditating, but our boy has no intention of meditating. He simply wants to pass the time by sleeping. After a while, China enters Arel's room and tells him it's time to study. Shocked by what he sees as a betrayal, our boy begins to weep. China, curious about whether Arel truly hates studying that much, asks him directly. Arel replies that he despises it more than anything. China, however, reminds him that at 5 years old, he should be experiencing new things and building his knowledge. Our boy responds that he has no interest in the world and doesn't want to know anything, as he feels he has no need for such things. This response leaves China feeling uneasy, as it makes Arel sound like someone who has lived many lives. She worries that his lack of curiosity may be the result of her poor teaching. However, our boy reassures China that it is not her fault. He thinks to himself that after working hard 100 times, he just wants to live as he pleases for once. China reminds Arel that according to royal law, he must begin studying at the age of 5. To make things easier, she has sorted out only the basic books. But after Arel glances at the pile of thick books, he skeptically asks China if she's sure she sorted them. Arel picks up one of the books China selected, commenting that it might be useful, then starts spinning it in his hand. China quickly protests, reminding him that he's supposed to read the books, not spin them, as reading is an important privilege. So much so that common children would love to read, but often don't even have books. Arel, however, ignores her and begins building a house out of the books. Frustrated, China knocks down the house and instructs him to always treat books with respect, urging him to return to his seat. It becomes clear that China is determined to make Arel study. Realizing his usual tricks aren't working, our boy decides to resort to the final trick up his sleeve. Our boy begins crying loudly, stubbornly refusing to study, but his final trick fails when the door to his study room opens and his mother walks in, furious at him for throwing a tantrum instead of studying. Her entrance quickly ends our boy's rebellion. He knows well that his mother wants him to learn, but ironically, the more he tries, the more danger he brings to those around him. As the son of a concubine who carries precious blood, the more his talents shine, the faster others will seek to kill him. Our boy believes that, while it may seem unfair, everyone's destiny is determined at birth. He feels it is his fate to live idly for the sake of protecting those around him. As he contemplates this, he drifts off to sleep, only to be woken by China, who gently reminds him that if he studies hard and earns praise, it will make everyone happy. Arel, sipping his tea, asks China if that's truly the case, as he finds it presumptuous to believe so. His maid tells him that he must stop saying such things, warning that if he continues, it could lead to misunderstanding. His mother will be sad. After hearing this, Arel sighs, thinking that he should at least do something for her sake. He reluctantly decides to study, though he excludes swordsmanship and magic from his plans. Our boy neither wants to die by the sword nor face the envy and jealousy that comes with mastering magic. A few days later, a carriage arrives at Lady Lavana's palace, surprising Arel, who watches from the window. He soon learns that a mage from the magic tower has come to measure his mana. China explains that if Arel is talented in mana, he will need to study magic-related knowledge. However, our boy has no intention of becoming a mage and fears that things will not go in his favor if others discover his immense mana reserves. He knows that, unlike China, the mage will definitely sense the overwhelming mana surrounding him, comparable to that of the strongest mages in existence. As China escorts our boy to meet the mage, she tries to reassure him, telling him not to worry and that he will certainly be able to develop his mana, no matter how small it may be. Little does she know, as they walk, a vast amount of mana is already surrounding Arel. When they enter the room and the mage takes his first glance at Arel, he is immediately stunned by what he sees. The mage is visibly shocked when he first looks at Arel, while our boy, on the other hand, can clearly see the flow of mana through the mage's body. Arel wonders how he must appear in the mage's eyes. The mage adjusts his spectacles and checks Arel's pulse, while China, concerned, asks if the prince is special. The mage hesitates, unsure whether to describe Arel as special or strange, because he cannot detect any mana in Arel's body at all. China is stunned, finding this completely impossible. The mage explains that he used his own mana to read Arel's energy channels, but was unable to find even a trace of mana. Arel, however, is secretly pleased that his mana-concealing technique worked. On the way to the reception room, he had controlled his chi circulation through his breathing, condensing the mana and sending it to his peripheral nerves. This allowed him to hide his mana so effectively that the mage couldn't detect anything, even after examining his veins. Our boy felt a sense of relief when he first noticed the mage's surprised reaction upon their meeting. It didn't make sense for the mage not to detect any mana in Arel, given the royal lineage. The mage reports to Lady Livana that he can usually detect small amounts of mana even in commoners, but in Arel, there was none at all. This makes Arel wonder if he went overboard with his mana concealment. Livana wears a gloomy expression, the kind Arel dislikes, realizing her son might never become a mage. Despite not liking her sadness, our boy feels sorry for his mother. However, Arel knows he cannot reveal his extraordinary talents. He needs everyone to believe that he is an incompetent child who cannot handle mana at all. After all, this is just the beginning of Lavana's son's supposed incompetence. The scene shifts to the training grounds, where our boy meets his instructor, Landfill Tagaron, a young knight who turned 25 this year. Landfill was hired by Arel's mother to teach him swordsmanship. He assures Arel that, with hard work, our boy can become as strong as he is. While our boy, on the other hand, thinks that his tutor, Landfill, is quite weak. An ordinary knight like him could never catch Arel's attention, considering that our boy has fought countless monsters and survived high-stakes, hellish battles. He even slayed a dragon effortlessly. Arel knows full well that Landfill is nowhere near his level, but he still wants to get the training over with. He tells Landfill that he's ready to begin, feigning a desire to become stronger. Landfill encourages Arel to trust and follow his guidance, but Arel quickly informs him that he has no intention of doing anything strenuous. He mentions hearing that his sister, Kania, had to wear weights to train her physical strength. Landfill explains that this is a normal routine for the Kinchester family. Arel then dryly comments that such a practice seems fitting for a family of martial artists. When Arel asks how they will begin training, Landfill responds that in swordsmanship, flexibility and balance are just as important as strength. Therefore, Arel will start with basic exercises to improve his balance and concentration. As Arel stands atop a wooden log, he begins to wobble, unable to maintain his balance. Landfill reassures him not to worry, telling Arel that he won't get hurt even if he falls from that height. But our boy insists that he can't do anything because he's afraid of heights. Puzzled by Arel's shaky performance, Landfill decides to shift to flexibility training, confident that Arel, being young, should handle it easily. However, Landfill is disappointed when he sees that our boy struggles even to touch his toes. Still hopeful, Landfill suggests they move on to sword training. He hands Arel a wooden sword and instructs him to use centrifugal force to transfer power to the tip of the sword and strike the target. But Arel fails again. The sword slips from his grip and falls to the ground. Landfill, surprised by Arel's lack of success in every aspect of swordsmanship, grows increasingly perplexed. Meanwhile, our boy feels disheartened as he comes to the conclusion that he has no talent for swordsmanship at all. Landfill offers Arel some encouragement, telling him that failure is normal for a first-timer and that things will improve with consistent training. He instructs Arel to pick up the sword again so they can continue the session. Meanwhile, our boy notices someone hiding behind a tree, watching his training. This works perfectly for Arel's plan, as he's deliberately faking weakness and incompetence in swordsmanship. The more the hidden observer plays their part, the better it is for our boy. Arel's suspicion proves correct when rumors quickly spread throughout the palace. It becomes common gossip that Prince Arel has even less mana than a commoner. These rumors amuse many, especially the queen, who finds them particularly entertaining. The royal family's butler informs the queen that Arel is so clumsy that he trips while simply walking and that he has failed in every aspect of martial arts. However, these rumors create a difficult situation for Arel. People begin labeling him a trash prince who can't do anything, and as a result, no one is willing to become his tutor. Arel is surprised when China informs him that they have finally found a private tutor who will soon arrive at the palace. He wonders about the bravery of the tutor willing to teach him. The instructor, Gamel Pernia, introduces himself as Arel's new private tutor and informs him that he will begin teaching him today. Meanwhile, Arel wonders if the tutor will start with language and foreign languages, noticing Gamel's disappointed gaze. Gamel places several books in front of Arel, explaining that they cover the common language of the kingdom. He adds that it usually takes one day to learn basic grammar, but if it takes longer, that's acceptable. Gamel reassures Arel not to worry if he struggles to learn the language. Surprised by the tutor's approach, Arel promises to do his best. Gamel further emphasizes that it will not be Arel's fault if he has difficulty learning the language. Even though Arel's poor grades are self-evident, Gamel continues to assert that it is not Arel's fault if he struggles to learn the language. Gamel explains that studying is more a matter of brainpower than interest or aptitude. However, Arel feels unsettled by the tutor's openly dismissive attitude. Despite the rumors portraying Arel as incompetent, he never instructed the tutor to look down on him. Our boy decides to create some tension with the genius Arel theory, which is easy for him because his body began developing earlier than most children his age. The reason he does not fall behind in language and writing is due to his hundreds of life cycles. Arel starts by using telekinesis to grab various books on language and grammar, and also decides to explore books from other countries while he is at it. He places all the books and necessary materials on the table, beginning his study with the language. Given his extensive experience, Arel finds it easy to learn languages, as he has discovered that many characters in the world share common linguistic rules, making language acquisition simpler for him. Arel spends the entire night studying different languages and subjects, informing his tutor that he has mastered the common language. Gamel, initially thinking it a joke, is taken aback when Arel insists he is not lying and offers to prove his proficiency by reading the books. Gamel suspects that Arel must have simply memorized the contents of the books. Arel suggests that it would be more interesting than learning the language in 2 days. Exasperated by Arel's jokes, Gamel tells him to try reading a different book. Gamel is both surprised and delighted as Arel devours the entire book effortlessly. This is particularly astonishing because, compared to the languages of neighboring countries, the common language of the kingdom is quite difficult. One typically needs to be at least 12 years old to read a simple book, so a 5-year-old mastering the characters in just 2 days is remarkable. As Arel's success reflects well on him, Gamel sets aside his initial negative opinions about our boy. He decides to teach Arel diligently, recognizing that having such a talented disciple could enhance his own reputation. The rumor of the idiot prince learning the language in just 2 days and even solving basic arithmetic calculations mentally, despite struggling to handle a sword properly, spreads rapidly among the nobles. The source of the rumors was the proud master of an exceptional disciple, who, elated by Arel's success, celebrated by boasting to the nobles. He claimed that he alone had recognized the prince's hidden talent, attributing it to his own excellent guidance. The news of the genius Arel theory eventually reached the king, who was astonished to learn of our boy's talent. He realized that forcing Arel into learning swordsmanship and magic, which did not suit him, must have been difficult. On the other hand, Livanna felt that there were aspects of Arel's personality she, as a mother, should have noticed sooner. She recognized that her negligence was a reason for the king's concern and apologized to Tearel for causing any disturbance. Tearel reassured Livanna, acknowledging that she must have had many worries due to the prince's situation. He encouraged her not to worry further, assuring her that Prince Arel would thrive if he continued on this path. Listening to their conversation, Arel wished that his parents would continue to look forward to his success. Our boy plans to avoid attracting too much attention while maintaining his interest. He also intends to find a suitable position where he can live comfortably with his legs stretched out, as he envisions himself cosplaying as a genius scholar who experienced a burst of intelligence at an early age. Later, Sheena enters Arel's room and drops a heavy chest on the floor, apologizing for its weight. Arel inquires about the chest, and his mother, who has just entered the room, explains that it is a gift from the king, which surprises Arel. Livanna urges Arel to open the box, and upon doing so, he discovers it is filled with gold coins and other treasures. Among the gold coins, Arel finds a necklace, prompting Sheena to wonder if it is the most valuable item in the chest. Arel informs her that, rather than being expensive, the necklace is extraordinary because it stimulates the brain when worn, thereby accelerating cognitive processing. The necklace helps one feel less fatigued. Sheena is surprised to learn that Arel knows so much about it, commending him for his recent hard work. Arel considers this to be basic information. While the necklace might appear ordinary to most, Arel can actually see the mana energy embedded within the gem. Despite this, he believes he does not need it due to his own inner power and wonders who he should give it to. After some consideration, Arel decides to give it to his sister, Kania, since he has been focused solely on physical training for swordsmanship and is gradually becoming more muscular. Arel asks his mother if it would be acceptable to give the necklace to Kania. Livanna is pleased with this idea, noting that while it is a gift from the king would be happy to know of Arel's good intentions. Curious about Arel's feelings towards Kania, Livanna asks him for the reason behind his choice. Arel responds that he admires Kania because she is quite strong, which causes Sheena to laugh aloud. The day Arel received the gift from Tearel was marked by widespread joy throughout the palace, as everyone was pleased to see Arel receiving affection and recognition from the king. Landfill, for instance, reminded the knights to always remember their duty to the palace. The scene then shifts to the dining hall, where Arel is eating desserts that he had asked his maid, Sheena, to prepare for him. Despite consuming dessert after dessert, Arel seems dissatisfied, unable to find a particular taste. Sheena, curious about Arel's apparent lack of enjoyment, tells him to eat more slowly and asks if he truly likes desserts that much. Arel responds that the desserts are not delicious because they all lack sweetness. Sheena mentions that the palace's best chef made these desserts and offers to call the chef. Arel, however, suggests that instead of calling the chef, Sheena should contact an alchemist, which leaves Sheena in shock. The reason Arel wants Sheena to call an alchemist is that he desires to drink cola, which requires alchemy to recreate its taste. This request surprises Sheena, as she does not understand why Arel needs an alchemist. Arel, however, is taken aback because he did not intend to voice this need out loud. He doubts that Sheena would understand even if he explained, as it is unusual for a 5-year-old to request an alchemist. Arel reflects that creating strong flavors with the current seasonings and ingredients available in the kingdom is challenging. Furthermore, cola requires secondary and tertiary processing, which is complicated by the lack of energy sources. He sighs deeply, longing for a refreshing, sweet, fizzy cola. Considering that he has already embraced the intellectual scholar concept, Arel decides to take action himself. He stands up from his chair and starts running, leaving Sheena surprised by his sudden departure from the room, asks where he is going. Arel replies that he is heading to his room to study, which further surprises Sheena, as she doubts she heard him correctly. The scene shifts to Arel running through the corridor. He has finally decided to learn alchemy, believing that chemistry, which he views as a form of cooking, will help him create his favorite drink. 3 years pass without pause. Arel is now leading a meeting with several ministers to discuss plans for building new bridges in areas with high merchant traffic. One of the ministers asks for Arel's opinion on the proposal. Arel, who has been examining a document, ignores the minister's question and inquires about the designer of the bridge, which he sarcastically refers to as a pinnacle of splendor. The designer, unaware of the sarcasm, proudly boasts about creating this so-called masterpiece. Arel then warns the designer that if he produces something as useless as this design again, he will take action against him, as this design may seem adequate now but does not meet Arel's standards. Arel points out that while the bridge's design may be visually impressive, it will become dangerous when snow accumulates in the winter. He explains that although the wooden components below will bear the weight, the safety of the bridge has been neglected in favor of extravagance. Arel emphasizes that while it is beneficial for the kingdom's architecture to be beautiful, the primary focus for bridge designers should be safety. He firmly orders a complete redesign, which intimidates the designer, but he agrees to correct the issues. As Arel's knowledge and intelligence have expanded significantly, he is now burdened with numerous responsibilities, surpassing even the top scholars and experts in various fields. Despite feeling that relying so heavily on an 8-year-old is excessive, Arel recognizes that there is no other option and resolves to showcase his abilities. The scene shifts to a maid from Lavana's palace, who notices Arel leaving the palace. She addresses him by the nickname, the Ashen Young Sage, which surprises Arel, as he finds the nickname quite cringeworthy. The maid apologizes for her behavior, explaining that her excitement at meeting Arel for the first time led to her addressing him with the nickname. Arel, however, concludes that the nickname, the Ashen Young Sage, might be a result of the maid's newness and warns her not to use it again, as he dislikes it intensely. The maid, almost inadvertently calling him by the nickname once more, promises to keep his preference in mind. Frustrated by the use of the nickname and the apparent lack of naming sense among the people of the kingdom, Arel boards the carriage to head out. His mother, observing from her window, notices his departure and asks China about Arel's destination. China explains that Arel is going to request an audience with King Tearel. Lavana becomes curious about the purpose of this meeting, prompting China to clarify that Arel wishes to learn about alchemy and needs the king's approval. The scene then shifts to Arel, who is curious about King Tearel's reaction after presenting his request. Arel hopes that the king, having granted the audience request promptly, recognizes the hard work he has invested across various fields. Despite his experience from hundreds of past lives, Arel feels nervous in the presence of the king's charisma and resolves to stay focused and speak clearly. In the king's chamber, Tearel inquires about Arel's motivation for wanting to learn alchemy. Arel responds that he aims to be of greater assistance to the kingdom and his father. Since he lacks talent in swordsmanship and magic, he believes his only option is to acquire and apply knowledge for the betterment of Arnesia. He asserts that, although he is young, his thoughts and dedication to his father are mature. Tearel is impressed by his son's ambition and assures him that he will introduce him to some reliable alchemists. King Tearel, who inquires if Arel has any additional requests. Arel responds that he will make separate requests as needed, feeling pleased that he has successfully persuaded his father. News of Prince Arel seeking an alchemist spread throughout the kingdom, attracting many renowned alchemists eager to showcase their skills and achieve greater accomplishments. Among them, it was only natural that Darmin Lanzet, a distinguished practical scholar of alchemy, was chosen. Darmin was known for creating a semi-reflective mirror capable of transmitting intense light from a distance, which blinded enemies and was installed on the outskirts of the western fortress to obstruct invaders. Darmin meets Arel in the royal palace garden, which he finds to be truly beautiful. However, Arel mistakenly perceives Darmin as an old alchemist from his back, only to discover that Darmin is actually quite young. This confusion leads Darmin to wonder if it was due to his white hair. He explains to Arel that his hair turned white after he accidentally inhaled poisonous smoke during an alchemical experiment. This makes Arel wonder if the story reflects how Darmin nearly died while learning alchemy. Although Darmin remains calm, Arel perceives it as a warning to be prepared. If he were to get hurt or die during their collaborative work or research, Darmin would be held responsible. Darmin then tells Arel that he must admit one possibly disrespectful thing. Learning alchemy is far more dangerous and challenging than Arel might realize, especially for someone so young. Arel confidently replies that he is already aware of the risks. He understands that alchemy is a science, not magic, and he has no interest in pursuits like turning lead into gold. Instead, Arel wishes to study methods for reducing impurities in iron or to develop stronger metals, as this is the type of pure technology he seeks. Darmin is impressed by Arel's intelligence and charisma, which align with the rumors he has heard. He believes that the kingdom of Arnesia will be guided by a true leader. Consequently, Darmin kneels before Arel and assures him that despite any shortcomings, he will impart all of his knowledge to Arel. A few days after our boys' alchemy classes started, Darmin is surprised to see our boy's efficiency in alchemy and questions if our boy has learned alchemy before. Arel realizes that he has been doing too much for just the starting classes, and so our boy makes up an alibi that he has been just hitting the books on alchemy a lot recently. Darmin somehow buys into that lie and claims that our boy is truly the genius Darmin has heard about all this time, which gives Arel relief that choosing to go down the path of becoming a great scholar in this world was the right one. Some time passes since the start of the class, and now it is the evening. Our boy confirms with Darmin if adding bone ashes or eggshells to the composition of iron will make it stronger, which is the concept like many others which Arel has already learned about, like the extraction of lead and the properties of other substances. But the metals and medicines of this new world are an exception since they differ from anything our boy has experienced in his previous life. But the rules that apply to these items are the same, which is a very fortunate occurrence for our boy. Darmin hears Arel mention the rules of alchemy and immediately picks up on it. However, Arel swiftly downplays the comment, making it seem as if he was speaking to himself, and strikes a pose to show that he has nothing to hide. Seeing the success of the alchemy sessions, Arel sends a messenger to his father, King Tearel, requesting the addition of 4 more alchemists. Tearel, accepting the request without hesitation, promptly instructs his guards to search for the best alchemists in the kingdom. Before this action is taken, the messenger expresses concerns about the potential cost to the kingdom and the possibility of public complaints. Tearel reassures the messenger that, given it is Arel who is conducting the research, the investment will undoubtedly benefit the kingdom. Once the new 4 alchemists arrive at Arel's palace, our boy informs them, including Darmin, that he intends to use alchemy to create a carbonated drink. This revelation shocks all of the newly arrived alchemists. Darmin stands there, unable to prevent this suggestion. The problem is that the alchemists, gathered in the concubine palace to work on projects that would enhance their families' reputations, are now faced with the task of creating new food items. Despite their reservations, Arel is so enthusiastic about the idea that he eagerly presents his plans for initiating the process. As the alchemists grow despondent over what they perceive as a potentially fruitless endeavor, Arel tosses a gold coin into the air and catches it upon its descent. He promises the discouraged alchemists that they will be generously rewarded for their efforts, regardless of whether the project succeeds or fails. Encouraged by the assurance that their sacrifices and ambitions will not be in vain, the alchemists quickly support Arel's idea of producing carbonated drinks. They propose starting with carbonated water, suggesting that they use the kingdom's natural carbonated water sources, which are already available and easily transportable. Hearing the now highly motivated alchemists, Arel is pleased that his research can proceed more rapidly. He recognizes that he can leverage their enthusiasm, as they are easily swayed by the prospect of fame and wealth. Thus, the journey to create drinkable carbonated beverages began, with barrels arriving from various regions of the country a few days later. Once all the barrels were unloaded by the diligent workers, Darmin's primary concern was the quality of the carbonated water. As he lifted the lid of one barrel, Arel, who was eagerly anticipating the arrival of the barrels, joined him in inspecting the water. Both immediately recoiled in disgust when they discovered that the carbonated water had an unpleasant odor and was in no condition for consumption. After inspecting barrel after barrel, Arel found the same spoiled condition in all of them. He confidently proposed the idea of creating an artificial sample of carbonated water, a suggestion that took the alchemists some time to consider. They all stared at the basic theories Arel provided, assuming they could keep up with his advanced intellect and understand the concepts he suggested. However, they quickly realized that the material was beyond their current capabilities. Despite this, Arel maintained unwavering faith in their ability to succeed, and even inquired of Darmin whether he shared the same confidence. Darmin hesitantly agreed that the alchemists present were among the best in the kingdom. Arel gave the alchemists 1 week to produce artificial carbonated water, fully confident in their abilities. However, this deadline was a psychological tactic to motivate them to work diligently on the complex task. A few days later, excited shouts of praise echoed even to the outskirts of the concubine palace, as the alchemists were lauded for their achievement, which was considered vital for the kingdom of Arnesia. However, it turned out that only Arel was excited about the flask of artificial carbonated water. The others found the task trivial and lacking merit, and they were unimpressed by the awful taste of the final product. It does have a nice kick to it when you drink it. Arel reassures the alchemists that they will not be consuming just raw carbonated water. Instead, they will be mixing in fresh fruit to create an interesting new drink. Arel's original plan was to make a cola using alchemy. Unfortunately, he was unable to find the cola fruit, but carbonated lemonade serves as a good alternative. The first test sample is lemon juice, which Arel pours into a large flask and gulps down instantly. He finds it absolutely delicious, to the point where his eyes sparkle with delight. Arel serves the lemonade to the other alchemists, and they, too, are impressed by the taste. Despite their initial skepticism about the project, this new lemon-flavored lemonade becomes an immediate hit, spreading throughout the kingdom of Arnesia and beyond. It is even titled Prince Arel's Carbonated Lemonade, achieving the status of a luxurious item that nobles trade among themselves. In a town, a man with golden hair holds a glass bottle of Prince Arel's carbonated lemonade, tastes it, and is astonished to discover that this exquisite drink was created by the prince. Lord of the Northern Territory, Count Dement, sits in his chambers, shocked by the news his butler has just delivered. The drink he holds was produced under the leadership of Prince Arel, and it has become a luxury item, contributing significantly to the economy of the Arnesia kingdom. Furthermore, there is a rumor that a carriage loaded with gold comes and goes from the concubine's palace daily. As Count Dement listens, he reflects on his mistake from 8 years ago when he judged Arel to be worthless at the banquet. Had he known Arel would turn out to be such a genius, he would have taken action. Now, however, he can only regret his misjudgment, feeling helpless. Determined not to repeat his mistake, Count Dement resolves to pay close attention to the prince from now on. The scene then shifts to 16-year-old Kania, diligently practicing her swordsmanship in Lavana's palace. She performs acrobatic moves with her practice sword while asking Arel. Now 10 years old, Arel listens as Kania asks for his opinion on her swordsmanship performance. Though he is slow to react, Arel eventually tells Kania that she looks really cool. Kania's maid agrees, praising her flawless basic swordsmanship. However, Arel has a slightly different perspective, thinking Kania is even better than boys his own age. Kania appreciates both compliments, and her maid suggests they take a break. As they chat, Kania mentions that she has been hearing a lot about Arel recently. She expresses amazement at how his development of carbonated beverages has not only benefited the royal palace, but also contributed greatly to the finances of the entire kingdom of Arnesia. Arel humbly replies that he was simply fulfilling his duty as a prince. Kania then brings up another rumor she's heard, that Arel is considered the perfect son of the king, and wonders aloud how many people must be envious of Lady Livana. This comment makes Arel reflect that the story of his soda development is not a simple one, as it also involves his mother, Livana Einrest. Arel, belonging to the fallen noble family Einrest, reflects on how his family managed to live as commoners, overseeing a small territory during the time he was developing soda. After learning more about his mother's circumstances, Arel entrusted soda distribution to the Einrest family, a decision that proved wise. Demand for both yogurt and MSG surged, making the soda a massive hit. People began fighting over the product, with some willing to pay 3 times the original price. As a result, the Einrest family's finances soared, and they reached a level where no merchant in the kingdom could rival them, which Arel finds dazzling. Kania, noticing Arel's success, tells him to slow down and not progress too quickly, as she's constantly being compared to him. In response, Arel invites Kania to share some soda and waffles topped with Irol syrup, reassuring her that she needn't worry about the cost since he's now wealthy. However, our boy suddenly becomes nervous when Kania, with a wooden sword at his neck, reminds him that wealth means little if he can't even exercise or practice swordsmanship. Kania offers to teach Arel swordsmanship, but Arel finds it annoying, thinking he no longer needs to learn it. However, he is grateful to see Kania putting in the effort to help him, even though she doesn't accept his reluctance and begins teaching him against his will. As they spar, with Kania instructing him on how to properly swing the sword, Arel reflects on her dedication. He realizes that Kania dreams of raising a family of sword masters, and it's this dream that fills her with such boundless energy, despite her fragile appearance. Arel decides that it would be best if he gradually puts in some effort to match Kania's energy during their practice sessions. The scene then shifts to Arel traveling through the streets in his carriage, where people are excited to see the prince pass by. Arel thinks their excitement is more about the carriage, which is the equivalent of a Lamborghini in this world, drawing plenty of attention, not to mention his escort, which makes Arel feel like he's becoming something of an idol. Despite all of this attention, what bothers Arel the most is wondering what the king will discuss with him this time, as he hopes the king might offer him another allowance as a reward for his recent achievements. The scene then shifts to Arel, sitting in front of King Tearel. There was a time when the tense silence of these meetings would make him nervous, but he has grown accustomed to it, as the king frequently summons him for various reports. This time, Aurel decides to enjoy the refreshments in front of him. However, he is caught off guard and chokes on the biscuit he was eating when his father suddenly asks for his thoughts on taking up a full-fledged government position. While this might be a bit early for Aurel, the king reassures him that no one would object if he did. Tearel then asks if Aurel has any particular job in mind. Already expecting this line of questioning, Aurel replies that he doesn't have any interest in a specific job, as he has always imagined simply playing and enjoying life in his 101st incarnation. Trying not to get overwhelmed, Aurel calms himself, taking a sip from his cup before asking his father what led him to consider Aurel for such a role. Even though Aurel still enjoys learning science and alchemy, he finds it odd that he is being considered for a government position at such a young age, especially when the first prince is far more qualified. So far, neither the queen nor the first prince has made any significant moves, likely because Aurel has never overstepped his boundaries. Aurel reflects on the fact that there is a significant difference between being loved by the king and being entrusted with a major government role. This makes him wonder if the king is intentionally trying to create conflict between Aurel and his brothers, despite Aurel's preference to avoid gossip and sibling rivalry. Aurel begins to question whether this is what the king truly desires, a struggle among his sons. He realizes that the concept of survival of the fittest applies not only in nature but also in politics. To be strong on the throne, one must be as powerful as an eagle. Weakness invites failure, regardless of how many past lives one has lived. Aurel speculates that Tearel might be seeking to create a realm where only the strong prevail. However, even if that is the case, it doesn't bother Aurel. He knows that the current version of himself will not be easy to challenge or defeat. Aurel has reached the age where he can easily ride a horse. As he trots across the hills far from home, he reflects that it's his first time venturing so far from the concubine palace, making him feel as though he has finally achieved a sense of freedom after working hard for so long. This newfound experience fills him with a sense of exhilaration. Our boy never imagined he'd become a workaholic homebody, especially given that he once traveled the world and even the cosmos in search of someone stronger than himself. Sitting at home had made him feel restless, but now, for the first time, he's truly enjoying the thrill of speed. Aurel credits this amazing trip to Kania, who is surprised to see him riding so well. She advises him to slow down, but Aurel responds by saying that he's able to ride fast thanks to the intelligence of the horse and the reins that are helping him a great deal. However, what puzzles Aurel is the presence of dozens of knights escorting them on this short trip. He wonders why all the elite knights have been gathered for such a simple outing. Kania tells Aurel that she mentioned not needing such a large number of troops, but her family sent them anyway. Aurel responds that it's understandable, given that Kania is a princess, and while he wishes for more freedom himself, her safety is the priority. He emphasizes that her life is important. As they continue, Aurel suddenly senses a dark magic energy and quickly tells Kania to hold on. Curious, Kania asks why he stopped, and Aurel replies that he believes there are monsters in the forest ahead and suggests they turn back. Kania, puzzled, wonders how Aurel could possibly know that. Since Aurel can't reveal his true powers, he tells her instead that he has a strong sixth sense and feels something is off, like there's a trap in the forest. Kania goes silent, unsure of how to respond. Aurel then notices that Kania's escorts are already riding into the forest, which surprises him. The escorts should be bringing the princess back to safety, not venturing into potential danger. Alarmed, Aurel reminds the knights of their duty. One of the knights, almost irritated by Aurel, tells him they are indeed on the right path, as Princess Kania's training ground lies beyond the forest. Aurel can't quite believe it, but Kania, oblivious to his surprise, confidently marches ahead with her escort knights into the forest. Aurel recalls that he agreed to this trip because Kania invited him, thinking it would be frustrating for him to just work and remain stuck in the palace. Kania, who enjoys adventure, thought this would be a good break for him. However, as Aurel walks deeper into the forest, he starts to feel like it's more of a burden than a relaxing outing. Kania reassures him, saying that traveling is practice and practice is traveling, and adds that Aurel would have come even if it had been framed as a practice session because he trusts her. This makes Aurel realize just how much faith he places in Kania. She assures him that she will protect him from any monsters, which makes Aurel appreciate her even more, realizing there is something undeniably cool about her. The scene shifts to a deeper part of the forest, where Arel begins explaining the details of the operation they're about to carry out to defeat the monsters. Arel explains the plan to the troops, instructing some to lure the monsters to one side while Kania breaks through, allowing the rest of the group to deal with the driven monsters. This strategy aims to use time and energy efficiently, maximizing Kania's abilities. The scene then shifts to the battleground, where the troops encounter 20 orcs. They alert Kania, who grips her sword tightly and, while riding her horse, slashes one orc after another, ensuring none escape. Arel, observing Kania's brutal efficiency, initially thought it would be impossible for her to take on an orc during her first practice. But to his surprise, she proves to be incredibly strong. It's not just her swordsmanship that impresses Arel, but also her composure, courage, and the fierce spirit radiating from her entire being. She overwhelms everyone present with her prowess as the practice continues for several days. After one such session, they camp for the night. Sitting beside the fire, Arel asks Kania if she's not exhausted after such intense training. Kania, unfazed, replies that she's fine. Rather than being tired, Kania expresses her desire to continue fighting. Arel tells her that it's not wise to overdo it, as people often make mistakes when they let their guard down. He knows this from personal experience, having once been in a similar situation that cost him his precious life. Both of them sit by the fire as they cook their meat. Once it's perfectly roasted, Kania eagerly begins to eat, finding the meal delicious. Arel, on the other hand, thinks that Kania is now truly acting like a real 16-year-old. As they enjoy their food, Arel asks Kania why she is working so hard to become stronger. Kania replies that as a princess, no matter how much she practices with her sword, no one will be truly happy with her efforts. People will likely think she is merely infatuated with swordsmanship and will eventually give it up to marry someone she doesn't even know. This realization strikes Arel, making him understand that political marriages are a common occurrence in aristocratic society. Arel also realizes that Kania's sister is already 16 years old, and as a princess, she is expected to be engaged for political reasons once she comes of age. As Arel contemplates this, Kania expresses her disdain for such a life, saying she wants to live like Arel, making a lot of money by doing what he loves, contributing to the kingdom, and receiving recognition for his efforts. Kania desires to be acknowledged for her own abilities and wants to contribute to the Kinchester family through her skills rather than through marriage. She tells Arel that she is determined to forge her own destiny, just like him. Arel responds with encouraging her belief in her own capabilities. He mentions that they will finally reach home tomorrow and acknowledges that Kania was right. It has indeed been a pleasant trip. He is glad he came on this journey with her. At that moment, we see a dragon lands behind the trees where Arel and Kania have set up camp for the night.